Good morning. Happy Saturday. Saturday. Do you ever think about the words that we say and how they are supposed to sound according to the letters, and then realize that maybe you say a word weird? The word weird is kind of weird to say. Anyways, I'm finishing up my F45 gig that I do every other week, and sounds like I'm going to get an opportunity to do this gig at Research Stadium, which is Oregon State's, I think, their football stadium, Research Stadium, and because F45 is going to be doing a free session for the community at Research Stadium. So I'm hoping there probably would be quite a few college students at that event. There might be some Beaver fans there, so that could be pretty fun. Different environment, potentially larger group of people. We'll see how that all plays out. The more I think about it, I'm like, hey, it will be a very different experience, because they'll be doing they'll be doing all the routines and the different stations, but they won't have the LED screens up to show people what's happening and the timers and all that. So I'm really kind of curious of how that would all work. It's going to take a little more logistics, so very exciting. When I came into F45 this morning, I was just chatting with Tara, who is the owner of F45 North Albany, and we were just chatting about, like, my wedding season is over for the year, pretty exciting, general business sort of stuff, and she was asking me about if I'm still trying to do a venue, and yada yada yada. Another person walks in the door as we're having this conversation, and we got to a point where we just said, it's a lot of work. And the person she said, like, just like she would know. And the person said, yeah, there are days when I feel like if I just worked a regular job, I could just quit. I could just quit. And Tara said, yeah, I can't just quit, right? Because when you own a business, you can't. You have bought your job, which means you're responsible for all of the logistics. Your customers need continuity, and that's very important to protect your name and potentially ensure that you don't piss a bunch of people off, because a lot of times your customers might also be your friends and your family. They might be your local community members. So you really can't just up and quit just because you decide you can't do anymore. And I also said, well, honestly, I mean, I work a job, and I have the other thoughts too, like how cool it would be if I didn't have a job, but if my business grew to the point where it could sustain me and I didn't need the job anymore. But I can't just up and quit my job. And so my point here is just thinking about, like, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, right? And so if you're a business owner, you might have these thoughts of how difficult it is, and people who work a job just have it so easy because they don't have to deal with X, Y, and Z. But then if you're a person who works a job, right, you've got a boss, you've got an employer, you've got procedures and rules and policies, you got HR, co-workers. There's all these things that probably make your job annoying, and you're like, oh, how much better it would be if I just didn't do this anymore, if I just went off and became a sole proprietor, maybe if I became a realtor or an accountant, something I could kind of do on my own. Good morning, man. Good to see you, bro. And so what it leads me to is, it's highly important to do your research. Do your research. So many people graduate from high school, or maybe they don't even graduate from high school. So I'm going to use the term graduate loosely, meaning people leave high school, they go into adult life, and they just go out and get a job, because you have to have a job to make money. Or maybe a person is really skilled and good at something and they realize, you know what, I could make money doing this. And so that's what they do. You know, maybe they start a lawn care business because they were good at cutting, they hustle and they're like, oh, I could cut some lawns and do some of this work. Or they're a handyman, so they decide to go into that space. Whatever it is, a lot of people just fall into whatever work it is that they do. Or they go to college because that's what you're supposed to do, and they decide what they want to do in their adult life based off of their childhood. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? There is no research involved in that sort of a situation. You know, when I was younger, I wanted to design roller coasters. And I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to build theme parks and design roller coasters, do all that sort of stuff. And that's why I chose to go to school for mechanical engineering, is because when I was a kid, I wanted to build roller coasters, and I read a book called The Fantastical Engineer. I actually did do research about this, by the way. I read a book called The Fantastical Engineer, and in that book, it described the various degrees and career pathways one would take to become a ride engineer. And I chose mechanical engineering because of this desire to build roller coasters. But that's not really enough research. What I'm saying with doing research is maybe spend some time with a person that does whatever job or career you think you want to do. Maybe also do some research about, like, how much money, what is the outlook of that job? Is it going to be around for at least 10 or 15 years where you could get into the field and get really good at it, start making quality money, which usually doesn't happen for about 5 or 7 years. You got to be in a job or a career for 5 or 7 years before you start to see any good return on your investment, whether that's from your education, schooling, experience, whatever. So you want to pick something that's going to be around for 10 or so years, so that way you're not in a dying industry. Do that research. Look at how much money you could potentially make if you were to go into that field. What would it take to become the top 20% of performers, or even 10% of performers? I guarantee you it's not hard to get into the top 20% in most fields, because a lot of people only get to the space where they hit about like 50% of they're pretty average. And they don't invest any more of themselves to go into the top 10 or 20%. And if you were to go into the top 10 or 20% in a specific industry or career, would it be beneficial to you? Do all of this research. Man, these lights, like, last minute, I'm going the speed limit and the lights change at the wrong time. So I could like speed through the light, or I could stop. And then of course all of my metal stuff in the back just goes slashing all over the place. So do all the research. What I was thinking about, and what I'm blessed with when thinking about a business, is that I get the chance to talk to people who own their own businesses and they do it full time. Whether it's photographers, or like Tara that owns this gym, or the person that's working at the gym who's doing it full time, and I get to hear their stories. You know, if you're going to choose to be a business owner because you think it's going to make you free of everything, well, that's not really the truth. Being a business owner doesn't give you liberty of doing everything you want. Being a business owner gives you freedoms in certain spaces where being an employee doesn't give you freedom. But you don't have total freedom. You know, for example, if I want to take a vacation in the summertime, that's going to be really hard for me to do if I'm a full-time DJ, because that's when a DJ makes the majority of their money as a wedding DJ is in the summertime when wedding season is happening. So am I really willing to give up, 2 weeks, possibly even 3 weeks of work, so that way I can go on vacation in the summertime? Likely not. I can do it now if I wanted to, because I have a full-time job, and that's where my majority of my money comes from. But I possibly can't do that if I were just a business owner. When you become sick and unable to do your work, unless you have somebody else that is a partner with you or does work, You can't just call in sick because you don't feel well. You can't just take a mental health day because you don't feel up to it today. You still got to show up and do the work. And so doing that research to really hear from other people what that experience is like for them. Most people are going to be satisfied being an employee. That's it. Just be an employee, be really good at your job, deal with the annoyances of the job, whether it's like the annual reviews, I have to be at work at 9 o'clock because the boss tells me to be there, even if I don't have work to do, all of that sort of stuff. Just deal with it. Just do it. Now, if you really want to be a business owner, you should be a business owner because you are highly skilled at it, and this is where you are your best self. If you can be your best self by being a business owner, then do that. But also think about like the logistics that you'd have to take care of to make sure that you're not backed into a corner. So I see maybe you're saying your schedule, and your schedule becomes your client's. Your schedule becomes your client's schedule, right? That's exactly what it is of being a business owner, and it's very difficult for so many people to do. Now, here's my situation. I got the best of both. I have a hybrid sort of occupation because I am an employee, so I make the majority of my money from being an employee. But I've made some changes throughout the years, and I really wanted to work a job where I could have a 8 to 5 sort of schedule with Saturday, Sundays off, because a consistent and very pleasing schedule would allow me to have more room to do other things with my life, whether it was like pleasurable personal things or doing things to make more money. I also own a business that operates typically on the weekends and at a specific time of year. And if it doesn't operate on the weekends and just at a specific time of year, it's most of the time in the evening. So my client schedules for what I do as a business work very well with my schedule that I have for myself. And so I've got the best of both worlds in that space. Now, if you really want liberty in your life, you want freedom, the best way to get that is to structure your finances. Regardless of how you make your money, structure your money in the right way where you can have freedom. And that's always going to start with making sure that the foundations are covered, which means like if an emergency happens, is that going to really impact your ability to live your life? You know, if your car explodes, or, you know, if you get into an injury, and of course you've got health insurance and that sort of stuff, but if you're not able to work for quite a few weeks or months, is your life going to be turned upside down because you can't bring money in? That's one way to give yourself some freedom or liberty, because then you're not at the mercy of an employer or even your clients. You can freely take time to allow yourself to heal. If a person passes away in your family that's really close to you, and you need a mental health year, can you take a year off of work and not be stressed out because you don't have any income coming in? That's a space where you could find freedom and liberty. If you get laid off from your job because there's no more work available, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Like, it's the natural flow of the economy where businesses have work and then suddenly they don't have work anymore, and they do layoffs. That's like a great way for a business to handle the unknowns of the economy. Well, it does impact you as a person. So if you get laid off from your job, do you have the freedom to be able to not work for so many months without getting to a point where you're living on the street? Are you planning ahead, for possibly expected expenses? Meaning, if you have a car payment, you're likely not going to have a car payment and major car repairs. unless you bought an old car. That's a very terrible situation. But if you bought a newer car and you have car payments, you're likely not going to have both major expenses on your car for repairs and a car payment. But once you finish paying that car payment, that's probably somewhere between 3 and 6 years for most people. You can expect that your car is likely to have major repairs that need to be done. Are you putting money aside for that? So that way you're just expecting every year I'm gonna have to throw about $1,000 into my car. When the repair is needed, you just go and pull that money out of the account. Your house, if you buy a brand new house, it'll be 5 to 10 years before you have anything major going off your house. But you got to start saving now. In 20 years, your roof is going to need to be repaired. It's going to cost multiple thousands of dollars. Are you preparing for that? Every year you've got some sort of maintenance. So if you're doing it yourself, that's fine, but you do have some maintenance. Maybe your HVAC system needs to do its yearly maintenance. Maybe you need to flush out your water heater and you don't know how to do that. You're going to have plumbing needs that you got to go and do some stuff with. Maybe you need to repair carpets and repaint things. Put that money aside. If you're preparing for these things, that's where you'll find liberty and freedom. Once those foundations are covered and taken care of, then the next space is to think about your retirement. And once you get that all set up and going, then I think is when mentally most people are prepared to think about making a transition. If you're a business owner and you want to become an employee, that might be a great time to make the transition. Or if you're an employee and you want to become a business owner and that's all you want to do, it's another great time to make that transition. You're always going to make, not always, you're more likely to make more money being a business owner because there is no ceiling to the amount of money you can make as an entrepreneurial person. But in a job, there's a ceiling to the amount of money you can make because there's a point where you just reach the max. But there's also a lot of wiggle room for how you could find a balance in your life. And so you got to do your research. Do your research. DYR. All right, I'm at the house. I've been sitting here for a few minutes. Just wanted to finish up this Facebook Live. I'm going to clean out my car and I'm going to go inside and I'm going to get some breakfast. Peace.